Oh, we're at 97%. It's not going to be enough, is it? It should be. It should be, but I don't know. Woo! Holla ballers, my God! The expansion is here, and it's been a whole reset, and good God, being back in the as you may or may not know, and why the video's been quiet this week, I'm back in the hardcore world. Somewhat. We're not a super hardcore guild, like in the top 10-ish, but they're a guild of very serious players. Very, very serious players. And it's been really cool to see with so many of you who joined us for the stream, because I did stream most of what I've done this week. Not everything, but seeing that we managed to show in a very clear way how a functioning, operating guild is so different to what people have seen in their guild experience. Because it's been very difficult over Legion. In Legion, on the channel, we made a concerted effort to try and get people to understand, one, just because you're in a guild, it doesn't necessarily mean what I mean when I'm talking about a guild. A collection of people who basically have a second trade chat isn't what I see in a guild. That's not what a guild has been for me for a long time. And this time, you've been able to actively see how a functioning guild operates for many people. And it's really inspired so many people to actually go, okay, I kind of get this, right? I kind of understand what it is you're saying when I'm seeing that I played very solo. This is the example. I played very solo because I was streaming and I do a lot of stuff with viewers. So my gearing process on my characters has been very much done with viewers, not really with the guild. And as I pointed out, when it was like 4 o'clock in the morning and we'd been playing all day, we've been playing for like 16 hours, I was like, look, and open up my guild tab, it's like there's 50 people online still. And these are all doing the same thing I'm doing because we all have this shared mindset and goal and everyone's working towards that. And it's not a case of a guild master going, you must do this, you must do that. Everyone wants to get this stuff done. And that's what a guild is about. You're all like-minded individuals who may tackle things in their own way. Some of you may go about it in a group way, some may go about it on your own. But you're all doing exactly the same thing. You're all functioning and you can check what the guys are doing and they're all doing very similar content because they want to do it. And I think that's what BFA has been about for me so far. It has reignited something I haven't had for a couple of years, probably since Legion launch, and certainly adding in this hardcore element I haven't really had since Mists of Pandaria, I want to say, was the last time I sort of played in this environment where you just want to play. Like, you log out and want to play. And I've had this weird moment where we'll stream for like 13, 14 hours, log off, and that's like me finishing work in a way, and then I go and play WoW. I go and play WoW. It's like, I want to do some other stuff in WoW. Off stream, that's what many people are doing. So, in contrary to a lot of people have been like, didn't you hate BFA? It's in a couple of months, I think, a lot of realities that I found, because you've got to bear in mind, guys, I've been playing BFA for like 7 or 8 months already. And that's when I think it's going to hit. But for raiders, it should be okay for a little while longer, like 2 months, because the raids are going to be out, obviously, in 3 weeks. We're in this like very great and wonderful 3-week grace period. So I wanted to address that first of all. It's very clear that when the change was made to add the grace period into the launch of a new expansion, there's a lot of players who've come in after that who really don't understand why it exists. They don't get it. They're like, why do we have this gated? Because everything is gated right now. We have this weird lull where we can only get what is going to be considered really bad gear over the next month or so. Like all this 340 Mythic Zero gear is going to be considered absolutely terrible when Mythic Plus comes out, when the raids launch, when the world bosses are out, all that kind of stuff. But they don't get it. It's like, well, I want to get started now. I want to go and do the Warfronts. I want to go and do the world bosses. I want to get raiding. I want to do this. Let me tell you guys, when it used to be that the game launched with everything, right? TBC did. Wrath of the Lich King did. I think Cataclysm did? Can't remember. It was terrible. It was terrible. If you were in a hardcore guild, then you didn't do much of anything. You just grabbed whatever crap you could and you started raiding. And that's when we saw things like Wrath of the Lich King where the raids were cleared within like 24 hours. That's what you were doing. But worse than that was actually all the wannabe hardcore guilds who aren't very good. You know the ones who are like, this expansion, we're going to push really hard, yet they've no experience. Most of the player base doesn't really know what to do. They're very disorganized, but the guild master or whatever has this aspiration that we're suddenly going to go from world 24,000th to we're going to be in the top 100 next expansion. No problems, right? And the player base and their guild mates aren't in that mindset. They don't understand how you even approach such a thing. And those guys were like forced. And there were so many players in that position. They were like forced to grind as much as possible just to get level cap, and then sort of thrown in a raiding environment where, one, they weren't quite good enough yet. They needed more practice in skill and being able to play in an environment where you don't know how bosses work. You never really had to play in an environment where you were very undergeared, and they would fall apart and crumble. And then you'd be like, well, I've already capped now, and I've missed all the story. I quite like the story. You might not like the story. I want to see what's happening. I wanted to check out a lot of other things before we got into sort of the raiding treadmill. There was lots of things I wanted to do before this. So with the addition of the grace period, it's allowed us to do that. It allows you to sort of enjoy the games, get your reputation sorted, get yourself some AP as it is now, get your characters all set up, you get to do a bit of farming, you get to go and farm mounts if that's your thing, you get to go and do all these little fun things before that treadmill really kicks in. And that's a wonderful thing. So I would enjoy this period, really take it back, sit back, let it just be a part of it, be fun with it, do what you want to do, make sure you do all the fun things, professions, things like that. Do all that, because this is a good time. It's a really good time to enjoy the game in that way. And if you're one of these guys who's like, well, I'm bored now, like, that's okay. I get that. I play around on alts. I'd certainly do some exploration. I'd do all those things, because in a couple of weeks' time, it's all going to go back to the shitter where you're like, right, now we're going, because Mythic Plus will be here. All those kinds of repeatable, endless content where you're going to be looking for gear and character progress, that's going to kick in then. So I would relax, take it in. Enjoy yourself. So what did the first reset bring for me in this new sort of hardcore environment? Well, we have a spreadsheet in my guild about what we want to do. The guild wants 2 characters, of which I chose Mage and Druid for the reasons we talked about in a different video. Not characters I really intend to stick with till the end of BFA, but I'm waiting for 8.1 to see what the final situation is with that. And also I said, if I've got time, I'm also wanting to do my warrior. So we'll see how it goes, how hard the leveling is going to be, because they kept changing how long the leveling would take and things like that. And my first reset yielded me 3 120 characters, all 3 of them over 340. So that was 3 times 10 mythic zeros. Managed to get the rep to do all the mythic zeros. I did them, a lot of people asking the item level, I did them like 290, between 290 and 305 on all 3 characters, and that was tanking, healing, and DPSing. And that was done with viewers. Okay, that wasn't like a guild of Mythic Raiders, and, well, some of them are Mythic Raiders, of course, but it wasn't like guild groups that were like farming through that. We did that with viewers. Mythic Zero is pretty easy, honestly. There are some very difficult individual little areas. So it's like in King's Rest, which is my favorite dungeon. The Berserker Trash is a pain, but it can be CC'd. And then, of course, the Shadow of Zool. Everybody seems to know that guy now. And relearning some of the bosses, there are certainly dungeons, for some reason, which are way out of whack compared to other ones. Some of them are cakewalks, and other ones are definitely far more difficult. But that's what I did. Did the Island Expeditions, which I'll get to in a second. And managed to basically do everything. The first reset was the hardest for me. There was so much grinding to be done, so much individual bits of content, including the leveling, that needed to get done before the first reset. And now the second and third resets, where there's still none of this farm content, real easy, real relaxed, no leveling to be done, everything's set in stone, can start polishing it up. And that's what I'm doing right now. That's what I'm doing right now, is polishing everything up. So on my mage, for example, I've done every single quest in the game. My mage's quest log is completely empty. There's nothing I can find anywhere unless it's gated off. So you might get like an outpost upgrade or something like that in a few days. But for now, totally done. Let's talk about some of the weird things that have been going on then that I've noticed from Blizz. They've made some changes that are smart in many ways. So with the addition of people not being capped yet, and obviously people dripping over the line. I'm sure most raiders tipped over probably on the first night into 120. I did mine in my first play session. Something about 11 hours for my mage. 11 or 12 hours. And then my druid and warrior were considerably faster. There's not many players around, so queue times and stuff were very difficult. And also, as Mythic Zero wasn't that hard, a lot of tanks and healers went straight into Mythic Zero. This left a lot of people who use the LFD system almost exclusively kind of up shit creek, and it reminded me of when the LFD system launched, where if you were a DPS, some of you will remember, 1 to 2 hour queues to get into a heroic dungeon weren't that uncommon. I can remember having to do it on my rogue during Wrath of the Lich King. If I wanted to do, say, an ICC 5-man, that was going to be a good hour and a half queue, which case I would queue up, and then I'd go and do dailies or herb farming or something while the queue ticked up. But obviously, in modern day WoW, don't you guys hate this? Can I go off track for a sec? Don't you guys fucking hate when someone goes, well, you think that's bad? In vanilla, it's like, shut the fuck up. That was 12, 13 years ago, dude. The game is way different. Stop saying that it was worse some of the time. Cars used to be worse as well. They used to have horses attached to them, right? That doesn't mean that my brand new car that's busted is okay because previously we had horse and carts or walked, right? Shut up. Just shut up with your, well, let me remind you. I see it everywhere. It fucking bugs the crap out of me. But Blizzard did a pretty wise thing in trying to solve that by basically crapping all over heroic AP rewards for the daily for DPSs. So that discouraged a lot of, certainly, raiders to go into the daily heroic. Once we logged in and saw that they had squashed the AP reward for the daily heroic, it was no longer worth, right? They changed it from 250 to 150, which is like less than a world quest. So I'm not going to queue for that content anymore. That drops out a lot of people who know that it's way more efficient to do an island expedition or something like that than the daily heroic. It's no longer worth my time. So that discourages a lot of DPS from queuing. That reduces the amount of people in the queue. Simultaneously, they gave more rewards to tanks and healers for doing the daily heroic. They got the extra bonus bag with all the runes and stuff in, which will make swag cash when raiding comes out. I see some people complaining about getting runes. If you're not a raider, those runes are going to be worth some big money soon, right? They're going to be worth some good cash. And also bonus AP for tanks and healers, so it is worth for them. That's a good thing. That's a good idea. So they bolstered the amount of tanks and healers going into the queue while simultaneously discouraging a lot of DPS who don't need gear from there, right? They're not chasing gear from the daily heroic from getting in there as well. So it kind of evened it out, and those complaints seem to have been alleviated by that system. So a smart decision there by Blizz. The reputation grind. Reputation is a pretty big deal. Obviously, you need Honor Bound or 7th Legion to unlock the Mythic Zero. Is that a better system than what they did with Suramar? So if you, for those of you who joined during Legion, you might not remember that at the launch of Legion, you had to undo the Suramar story campaign in order to unlock Court of Stars and Archway. And they were locked off until you did that. Now, they are account-wide, so you had to do it on one character. Personally, I loved that because I really enjoyed Suramar. Not everybody did enjoy Suramar, unfortunately. Not everybody did. And having this idea of gated dungeons was very discouraging for a lot of people. This sort of attunement process that went with it. This time around, though, it's just rep. And not a particularly difficult rep to get, let's be honest. Honor Bound and 7th Legion isn't difficult to get. My character is way over revered now. So it wasn't that bad to get, and you only needed 7.5k in Honored to actually get it. So keeping up with some world quests and stuff, you managed to unlock it in like 4 days. I think that's okay, because the war campaign story is pretty good as well. Exactly what you're doing alongside it. I see people being a bit upset about it. Apparently there's a widespread issue with people joining Mythic Zero pugs and being unable to get into Siege of Borealis or King's Rest or whatever. I'm totally fine with it. I think it's a less interesting system than doing the Suramar way. I would have loved a campaign that I could be getting on with during these 3 weeks, like the Suramar questline, that was nothing that I could take part in while leveling. The war campaign is okay. Suddenly you've got a better reputation now. Here's a bit of an extra quest. But as we know, Blizzard likes gating off content in order to elongate the playtime. Right? It doesn't really add more to it than that. But that's okay with me. But reputations in general, a lot of people are seeing me, like on one character, what I'm doing is every single world quest every day. We do what we call the World Quest Rodeo. We go out with War Mode. We have 5 people. We have a lot of fun. War Mode has been great. We've been ganked. We've done some ganking. It's added a lot of spice while we're doing the World Quest grind. I like War Mode. I think it's been one of the best additions to BFA, and I think it's playing out that way for most people using it. Solo players are probably having a different encounter because they've just become cannon fodder, unfortunately. But the idea is you will group up to do your world quest. That's what they're trying to do. And if you are doing that, it's a lot of fun. Sometimes you are going to get stormed by a group that suddenly turns up that's doing the exact same thing on the other team. We've had that. And sometimes you're going to be the offense and you're going to go out there. And certainly a great addition has been the Alliance Slayer quest. Once you've PvP'd a lot, or the Horde Slayer quest, you will get a quest, which is like, you are now marked, you're a bounty, and if you kill 10 people while you have a bounty, you then get a new title, a feat of strength, all that kind of stuff, and you become the Alliance Slayer, or the Horde Slayer. And I think that's a real nice incentive, and it's nice. It's a nice feeling, honestly. It's uncomfortable when you get the marks, like, you're now marked to all the enemy. They know where you are, and they are coming for you. And then most often than not, they don't come for you. I generally think it's a warning to stay away. But sometimes they do come for you. And if they've got a war party in the same zone, they're probably going to come for you and get a little bit of PvP going. It's fun. It's not balanced in any way, but it's definitely something that spices up, like, go here, kill this guy, go here, kill this guy. I'm very much enjoying it. Not particularly for the rewards, I've got to say. I'm not particularly enjoying War Mode for the extra percentage, although I'm definitely getting the advantages of that. It's more a case of it keeps things fresh. And that's good. Champions of Azeroth, though. So this brings me to the mission table, and I have no idea what the hell is going on with this thing. I did some checking yesterday because we noticed that despite me capping on the day of launch and doing as much as I could possibly do, the only thing I didn't do was the island expeditions before the reset. My Champions of Azeroth rep is way lower than nearly everybody who's been watching my stream, or certainly from people in a similar position. And it turns out it's down to the follower table, which is generating random amounts of reputation, and it's already caused a massive skew. On my mage, I've had 1 Champions of Azeroth mission total. There's a paladin in my guild who got 4 yesterday, and he's already at 8k plus in Honored, and I believe there's a guy who's already revered. What's going on with that, creating such a discrepancy? For a relation, I'm 5,465 out of 12,000 rep on Champions for Azeroth. That's where I'm at, doing everything I can possibly do on my main character. Whereas there are other characters who are literally 4 or 5k ahead of me. Is it a big deal in the long run? No. No, it's not. Our goal as raiders is to hit revered before the raid comes out. But of course, it is one less grind. I mean, knocking off thousands of rep out of a rep grind that you do want to do is a significant amount of content that I need to make up for by doing individual. I mean, it's a lot of hours. It's a lot of hours of world questing and stuff like that. And from that perspective, it's kind of a big bummer that it seems to be at the mercy of RNG. But what can we say about that? Nothing much. Let's talk about loot for a second then. So loot's been a real interesting thing to watch. The start of BFA. Obviously, a lot of people have bought their way to a certain item level, which I think is very silly, as gear doesn't really matter right now. The gear in the game is currently capped, right? It can't go above a certain level, and that level isn't particularly high. It might seem high to you, but it's not, because all the real heavy sources of gear are currently blocked off. You can't do them. So spending millions of gold on upgrading your gear at the auction house, while that will give you somewhat of an advantage when, say, Mythic Plus launches, if that's what you're going for, is going to be a lot of sunk gold very, very quickly. Because we've obviously got 3 weeks of accessing gear that can, in fact, Titanforge and Warforge up to a very similar level to what you can purchase. And therefore, you might just buy, say, 355, whatever, and you get that to drop in a couple of days later, and you could have saved yourself. I know some people have spent up to 1 million gold on certain items. That's pretty baffling to me. As I said, I take this 3-week period very chill. In the lead up to Mythic Plus week, sure, that's when we'll look at which pieces we're missing and maybe do some crafting, do some upgrading in order to flesh those characters out. I'm sure several of you were wondering, what are my characters at? So my mage is 342. My druid, actually, is 347. He got very lucky. And my warrior is 341. That's where we got, which then brings us to scaling, I should imagine, is the next big topic and what I think about that. I have personally been screwed over by the scaling system. My mage was 341 and could not, just physically could not do one of the simple wanted quests. While I was polishing up all the quests, couldn't do it. It was one of the Vol'dun wanted quests. Weirdly enough, it's a quest that I soloed very easily on my warrior and my druid while I was leveling in Vol'dun. And I was like, what the hell is this? Like, I couldn't get it below 50%. If it got near me, it could not be slowed. So if it did one hit on me, it basically took at least a third to 2/3 of my HP. It just smacked me so hard. So I was like, what to do here? So I used the quest finder, and we'll get to that in a second as well. I used the quest finder, and a 114 demon hunter joined, who basically killed it for me. I have been absolutely monstered by low-level characters. Certainly 110s with decent gear, Legos and stuff are crushing you. Even at 342, they're smashing you to pieces. Like, once they hit you, you fucking feel it. You can, of course, murder some 110s as well, depending on what gear they've got. It's all very relative. What I can tell you is after 340, the scaling does seem to stop. Or you've outgrown it. So the scaling system right now, you do become more powerful, but it seems to have like 5 item level increments at the moment, and it seems to stop around 340. As I said, my druid is now starting to crush things. Who's like 347, he's starting to crush the world, so it seems to stop around there, or perhaps it's gated for the moment and they might up it again later once you start hitting 350 or whatever. But it's a very, very counter RPG system. For some reason, and I kind of see why this is happening, Blizzard seems to not want you to get too powerful too quickly. And the way they used to beat this was simply make the world harder, and then certain areas of the world were far more difficult, but they would also be the places that dropped things like expensive materials to craft raid gear, right? In TBC, we had Elemental Plateau. So Elemental Plateau had all these very high-level elite elementals that were practically impossible to solo at the start of TBC and for a long time. But if you did it in groups, it was fine. It was like that. And then later on in TBC, you could start soloing it very effectively, which is kind of how RPGs should work. Unfortunately, in Legion, the world was so easy, and I think people have been accustomed to the world being so easy that it's been a big hit in the face. Now, I'm not saying I like the scaling system. I don't. I think it's very silly. I think it's a really, really dumb system. But at the same time, looking at the complaints of people who are like counting how many clicks of spells they're doing to kill enemies, I think if they did create harder real-world areas that were just very, very difficult and contained valuable materials, the uproar might be worse, but that's a guess. That is a guess. I do get why they don't want you one-shotting the mobs 2 weeks into the expansion, right? Because that's only going to get worse and worse and worse. And we end up in Legion where the world just was a playground that made no sense. But it definitely feels weird because of this 5-level increment that I'm seeing. What tends to happen is you suddenly say you get to 334 and you're starting to feel really comfortable and you can just mash stuff up, and then you get 335 and then it's like, oh my god, I'm nearly dead. And it keeps sort of switching, going up and down. I think the next thing to talk about would be the Azeri Armor. The Azeri Armor. Is anyone enjoying the system? It's starting to feel a bit... It's starting to feel like a joke with the amount of it that you're getting. And of course, part of that is bosses generally, leading up to the final boss, drop 1 piece of loot, although they were changed this week to have a chance at dropping 2. But if you didn't get loot in those, and you are in a group of people who haven't done any bosses, then generally you're going to get something off the last boss that usually guarantees 2 items, depending on most circumstances. And most of the end boss loot tables are Azeri Armor. So that means that... Lo and behold, if you don't get any loot in a dungeon and you're coming to the last boss, you're already saying to yourself, God's sake, I'm getting more Azeri Armor. And at the moment, I really don't need any more when I've got like a selection of heads and shoulders to go along with it. Not only that, you're continuously reworking towards mostly the same traits, which is the big problem I talked about earlier in BFA beta, is you might have a trait and a secondary in a piece of armor, and then you get another piece of armor which has the same trait on it, but now you can't access it. And you're like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Included with that would be the stuff that is the same item level Azeri Armor, yet requires different amounts of neck power to unlock. So you might have, say, a 340 pair of shoulders, in which you can only unlock the first trait, yet you get a 340 Azerite pair from a world quest which requires 15 and 17 to unlock the first and second traits. And you're like, these are supposed to be the same, right? But this one's clearly more powerful, as I can unlock all the traits. It has the same amount of intellect and stamina, but I can unlock more of the traits right now. So what's happening with that? I don't know. I don't know, but I know not many people are starting to meme hard on the Azeri Armor. But hopefully, it won't be at Gamescom, but hopefully when we find out a bit more about 8.1, we'll figure out exactly what they're going to do with this system, and they're going to leave it the way it is, or are they going to fix it up? Last thing I wanted to talk about then was the Island Expeditions. Yeah, so my review of them on the beta was they could be good. They should be okay for the first little while, but then they get tedious. Seemingly, for the most part, people have just gone, nope, just do not like this at all. It rewards no gear. It feels like a gear farm. I did it 3 times last week. I'm going to do it 3 times again this week, and probably 3 times for the foreseeable future. In terms of it doing like that and just doing 4 or 5 to get the mission done, I don't mind that. That's fine with me. That's a fine old little grind to get done. It's something to get done. But I can certainly see the point that at some point I'm probably going to have to farm some Island Expeditions for AP in order to make sure I have my neck at an appropriate level. I will see how that goes closer to raid time. And from that perspective, not looking forward to it much at all. But I will say this. They seem to be a lot more fun in PvP. And I'm going to do that on stream this time round. But I can totally get where people are coming from. Is this thing that only rewards cosmetic stuff, mounts, pets, things like that. And if you're not really into those, such as me, and they're not rewarding gear or anything, and they're basically just this arbitrary... It's like an Apex's farm room. Because the Heart of Azeroth is incredibly derivative, right? It's an incredibly uninspired piece of gear that has a number on it, and number higher is better, and you must farm to make number go up, and it doesn't really do anything else than that. It's just this thing that's just a number, and your number must go up. It's about as arbitrary as it could possibly get. So if you see it from that perspective, I know some people quite enjoy just having a permanent farm in the game, but if you see it as just this arbitrary thing to make your armor that you've already got work, then yeah, they're very, very horrible systems to be in place. But we'll see how they play over the next few weeks. Well, that has been my first reset, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening. I hope your grind is going well. I know many of you have gone back to work now who took time off, but we'll be back with YouTube content going forward. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.